Okay, we're making progress. Very good. Okay, so hopefully today, God willing, we'll be concluding the book of Daniel. So the last paragraph of the chapter 11, and then the relatively brief chapter 12. But there's lots of very interesting commentaries to read from. About a lot of it about Messianic times. Okay. Do we have volunteer translator of the text and translator of the commentary?
Can do the text.
I can do the commentary if you like, Rabbi.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, so Linda said commentary, correct?
Yes.
Okay, who said text?
Me, Ernestine.
Ernestine? Okay. All right, very good. Chapter 11, verse 40. I'll start by saying the original Hebrew, and then Ernestine will give us the translation. Ernestine, you're using the art scroll, correct?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Here we go. Uveis kates is nagach imo melech hanegev v'yistaer alav melech hatzafon v'recheb uvefarashim uvanios rabos uva v'aratzos v'shataf v'avar uva be'eretz hatzvi v'rabos yikashilu v'ili yimaltu miyado Edom u'Moav v'reishis b'nei Amon v'yishlach yado ba'aratzos v'eretz Mitzrayim lo sihiya lifleta Mashal b'michmanei hazahav v'akesef v'chol chamudos Mitzrayim v'luvim v'chushim b'mitz adav. Ushemuos yivahaluhu mimizrach umitzafon v'yatza b'chema gedola lahashmid lahacharim rabim v'ta'alei padno ben yamim lahar tzvi kodesh uva ad kitzo ve'ein ozer lo. Okay, Ernestine, please translate verses 40. Ernestine is doing translating. Ernestine, verses 40 through 45 of chapter 11 in Daniel.
Then, at the time of the end, the king of the south will clash with him, and the king of the north will storm against him with chariot, horsemen, and many ships. He will invade countries, flood them, and pass through. Then he will invade the coveted land. Many will stumble, but these will be saved from his hand. Edom, Moab, and the choice parts of the children of Ammon. He will stretch forth his hand against lands, and the land of Egypt will not be a survivor. He will gain control of the cache of gold and silver and all the desirables of Egypt, with Libyans and Cushites crushed in his footsteps. But news from the east and the north will alarm him, and he will set out in great anger to destroy and annihilate many. He will pitch the tents of his palace between the seas and the holy, coveted mountain. There he will come to his end, and none will help him.
Okay. Okay, so and so now there's very fascinating exegesis commentaries on the next reading today. So before I do that, I just want to quote. Now I'm going to do this a couple times tonight, God willing. To go to the Art Scroll Tanakh series Ezekiel. So in the Art Scroll Tanakh series of Ezekiel, they have things that they don't mention in the Art Scroll, the blue edition, of Ezekiel, which is the Milstein. So one of them is a quote from a Gemara that we need to cover to understand messianic prophecies in Tanakh. And I'm going to quote from the Art Scroll Ezekiel now, just briefly from the commentary on page 569 on verse 37, 8. Okay. Shmuel in Brachos 34b states, there is no difference between the Messianic era and our times, except that then we shall not be subjugated by the nations. Okay, so now if you want to read more about this concept, again, that's page 569 in Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 8. Okay, but just keep in mind that quote from the Gemara in Brachos 34b. I quoted from a book that perhaps we already covered, and perhaps you already have in your library, perhaps not, but just wanted to give a source in English that, I assume it's easier for most people to buy a book on Tanakh than to buy a Gemara. So I'm trying to give a source in English that's the easiest one to find. It's not just about fact checking, it's about your capacity to grow as a scholar. So if you know where to find a source for it, it'll help you remember it. So again, it's just a Gemara in Brachos 34b. If you have a Gemara in Brachos, all right. But so in Brachos 34b, there's no difference between the Messianic era and our times, except that we shall not be subjugated by the nations. That's the most important aspect of prophecy about Messianic times to know. The most important rule by the sages. Why is that? Because when we don't have something that's talking about freedom of Jewish freedom, to have to live without danger, to have freedom of religion. If a prophecy is not talking about that, so then there's no guarantee it's talking about end times, right? So now even if a prophecy never occurred yet, literally, it doesn't mean it has to occur even between now and Mashiach time, because some prophecies, especially in more esoteric works, do not have to be literal. For example, in Zechariah, there's so many parables. In Ezekiel, there's some parables. Here in Daniel, we saw, even though we saw the discussion that Daniel was higher than Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi, the greater prophet than them. Still, there are many parables in Daniel, but the thing is about in Daniel, then the angel gives them explicit interpretation. So it's not really as allegorical as like in Zechariah, where it's just left to interpretation. There's no explanation whatsoever. And you have to try to figure out what's going on. Like in chapter 14, which talks about messianic times, it's not necessarily talking about the exact same number of years. It could be talking about over the course of 100 years. So in other words, for us to know for sure a prophecy is talking about messianic times, and if it didn't come true yet, it's about to. It has to be related to the concept of Jewish independence, either being able to, for example, defend themselves against terrorism, or to be able to rebuild the temple on the Temple Mount. In those cases, those prophecies are assuredly literal. You understand? Because that's the only litmus test, according to the great sage Shmuel. It's the only litmus test that something is definitely talking about the Mashiach time. Okay, so let's keep that in mind, and then now we're going to go back into Daniel 11 and see. This is talking about kings of the north and south. But we've already saw previously in chapter 11 that the king of the north and south has changed. This is the third time we're talking about a king of the north and south, and it's probably a third set of kings of north and south. Okay, so now if there is a parable to this in history, so then we don't have to say it's related to Mashiach times. If it's a parable related to Mashiach times, so then it doesn't have to be literal, because unless in chapter 12, for example, the angel is going to tell us this is a literal translation. But so far as we just saw, it's not necessarily literal. Okay, so now look in verse 44. No, verse 45. So he will pitch his tents of his palace between the seas and the holy coveted mountain. There he will come to his end, and none will help him. Okay, now keep verse 45 in mind. This is very important because we're talking about someone attacking the Holy Land and falling in his conquest of the Holy Land. How many times has that occurred in history? Okay, right. So one of the commentaries points out this must be talking about Mashiach time, the war of Gog and Magog, as we talked about in Ezekiel chapters 38, 39, and in also in Zechariah 14. So now here, look in verse 40, the commentary. Linda, you're the translator of the commentary.
Yes.
Okay, read the first paragraph in 40.
In 40?
Yeah, will clash.
Okay. Just a second. I was on 45. I will get to 40.
I'm trying to confuse you, but you apparently are
You're
able to follow
doing
along.
pretty good at it.
Well, yeah, thank God. I'm a better teacher than I used to be, I guess.
Okay, I've got
Now I have learned.
39. I'm trying to get to 40.
Very
The
good.
epilogue, is it on that side, epilogue?
Page 141 in the blue edition of Daniel. And that's
141, okay.
left-hand column, 40.
Yes, will clash. Will involve himself, literally, will involve himself in goring him, including with the king of the north.
So i.e. it means that is it's a really a explanation. What we really mean is, or in Old English it would be translated namely.
Okay, namely, with the king of the north mentioned in previous verses and in those immediately following. Malbim points out the similarities between this prophecy and that of Ezekiel 38 through 39, where the king of Magog will come from your place in the uttermost north, 38:15, and bring you upon the mountains of Israel, 39:2.
Okay, so now we have it. Here we have the source. Malbim is of the opinion, he's one of the top commentaries on Tanakh. So Malbim is of the opinion we're talking about Gog and Magog. So this is now a third book that's talking about Gog and Magog. We already discussed the possibility of that in earlier in the chapter last week. But here now we have Malbim explicitly going there and saying that. But there's a complication. Okay, so we're going to again read chapter 45 in the English and then go back to Ezekiel to do a comparison.
You want
so Ernestine?
You want Ernestine to read it?
Yeah, Ernestine.
Okay.
Okay, so you're our main person up at bat for the translation. So if you wouldn't mind retranslating 45.
45. Let me see. 45. He will pitch the tents of his palace between the seas and the holy coveted mountain. There he will come to his end, and none will help him.
Mhm.
Is it just 45?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Just 45. Excellent. So the tents of his palace. So here it doesn't say explicitly, for example, like in Megiddo or Armageddon Junction or something like that. It's saying, yeah. Okay, so that's evil Gog, and he's moving kind of slow at the junction, Armageddon Junction.
No,
I had to do it. I had to do it. Sorry.
no.
Okay,
You're not
so
singing that horrible, awful song.
I apologize. Okay, listen, I'm trying to
You don't
improve.
want to do that. You don't want to keep singing that awful song every single time I hear it.
I don't want to do that. Okay, very good. He will pitch his tents in the palace between the seas and the coveted holy mountain. Okay, now let's look at the commentary. Coveted holy mountain. This is on page 142. Linda,
You want
translate the
the tents of
commentary
the
on.
palace? Is that what you want read?
No, the first paragraph on the commentary, page 142.
Okay. It starts on 141.
Yeah, I'm trying to confuse you again.
Yes, you are. Verse 30 tells that the successes of Islam in distant countries, including Afghanistan, etc., this marks the beginning of decline, and with it an upsurge of anti-Semitism under the Abbasid dynasty.
I'm sorry, where are you?
That first paragraph on 142.
Two.
Oh, and
Thank you. I've taught you so well. Now you're confusing me. Thank you. That's pretty good. Pretty good.
Holy coveted mountain. This refers to Mount Zion. Ar Shmuel Masnuth. Medusa.
Yeah, Rabbi Shmuel Masnuth. He was classical sage. Okay. All right. Yeah. So please continue.
Medusos has referred to Eretz Yisrael as above, verses 16 and 41. Thus, the mountain of the holy coveted land. Here again, Malbim points out the striking similarity between Daniel's vision and that of Ezekiel. There too, the king of Magog, the north, see verse 40, fights his last battle in the valley of the passers-by, east of the sea, Ezekiel 39:11, and on the mountains of Israel 39:2.
Okay. So now we're going to go back to the Art Scroll Tanakh series, Ezekiel, to page 596. That's on chapter 39, verse 11. Okay, so in other words, Malbim is now connecting it to the valley of passers-by. But which valley of passers-by? In Ezekiel 39:11. According to the as Art Scroll is quoting him. Okay, so here and 39:11, and this is not in the Milstein edition. You could find this in English only in the Art Scroll is Tanakh series, Ezekiel, this white edition here. On verse 11, so the valley of the travelers east of the sea. Okay, well let me read the verse from Ezekiel. That's 39:11. Vayamahu atain lagog makom sham kever b'Yisrael gehovrim kidmas hayam v'chosemes he es haovrim v'kavru sham es gog v'eskol hamon v'karu ge hamon gog. On that day I shall assign Gog a burial site there in Israel, the valley of the travelers east of the sea. It shall block the travelers there, and they will bury Gog and all his horde, and call it the valley of Gog's horde.
Is this the one where the tongues melt and all that stuff?
That's in Zechariah 14. So that could be something different.
Okay.
According to one possible interpretation that I previously gave, the tons melting is a description of mustard gas in World War I. If you know about that,
Yeah, I do. Okay.
unfortunately, yeah,
Unfortunately, yes, I do.
mhm. Horrible. They started to ban weapons of mass destruction because of it. Horrible maiming of people. Ever since then, I prefer ketchup. I'm just putting it that way. Okay. So, mustard. Okay. Never mind. All right. So, listen to the commentary here. This is commentary of Targum, brought down in page 569, Ezekiel, the Tanakh series, white edition. So Valley of the Travelers east of the sea. Targum identifies the sea as Yam Kinosar, the Sea of Genosar. We know it as Yam Kineris, Sea of the Galilee, according to Radak. Radak is quoting Targum. Okay. Okay, so the sea we're discussing is the Galilee Sea, not the Mediterranean Sea, according to Targum and Radak. Okay, so why is that a problem? Okay, and again, this interpretation is all based on the Malbim. Okay, but to get there, so now we have Radak and Targum giving us a limitation on this. Okay, so why is that a problem? Okay, because perhaps you've heard commentaries before about Armageddon Valley, right? Which is east of the Mediterranean, right next to, pretty close to Haifa by Mount Carmel, just east of that. Okay, but if the sea is no longer, at least according to this interpretation, let's run with this for now. If the sea is no longer Mediterranean, but now it's Kinneret, the Sea of the Galilee, so then we're no longer talking about in Eretz Israel proper. We're talking about in Transjordan.
Uh-oh.
An entirely different perspective about where the war of Gog and Magog will occur. Fascinating, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So let me get a map out. The Art Scroll Tanakh. And yeah, the Art Scroll Tanakh has lots of pages of the at the back of the book, appendices, charts.
Rabbi, do you want Teresa to read the commentary out of Ezekiel Tanakh series?
Oh, not at this time. Let's first okay, here. This is on page 20, 2044 in the Hebrew English Art Scroll Tanakh. Appendix D. Yeah. So let's look at territories in Transjordan. So if you look, Sea of Galilee to the southeast of that would be somewhere between Debir and Sukkoth. That would be in the territory of Gad, of Shevet Gad. Interesting. Okay, so we're either talking about this or that. Now, if so, either Armageddon area, right, is the popular discussion, but according to these commentaries, we're talking about in the tribe of Gad in Transjordan. That's
May I ask a question?
yes.
So we're talking about land, the land that Gad and the others wanted before they crossed the Jordan. This is that land.
Right. Now,
And
this gives
so Hashem is not going to even allow them to get to Israel before he takes them out.
now that's very interesting. You see what I'm saying? This is an incredible idea. So it does two things. Okay, number one, remember this is going to be an unusual thing. Normally, the Jewish custom is even by an enemy, we try to bury them right away, so the body, we're careful about the image of God stuff, and
Yes.
the body should not be picked apart by birds. But there's a specific commandment by the army of Gog. Israel is supposed to let them sit there for months on purpose, so the birds could feast on them as part of the punishment. So if indeed the destruction of Gog occurs in the Transjordan, so that means God's protection of Israel is more absolute than we thought.
Yeah.
Right? That God wouldn't even let this occur in the Holy Land directly. Only in parts where Israel was allowed to live. But again, the Talmud goes into lengths about how Gad and Reuben made a mistake, and they really should have been in Israel proper for the full holiness. And in Mashiach time, they will be in Israel proper. Their portions. So this is rather profound. Also, another thing is that we see that, in a sense, maybe it could be interpreted as a admonition to Gad and Reuven that, accept the gift God gives you. He knows what's best for you. Because you desire a different land, that land would be filled with blood. You understand? At some point in the future. It's just another amazing idea that, again, I picked this up studying for this class. I didn't hear that other people talk about this, so I don't know if you have. This is the first time I'm learning this too. Okay, so really cool stuff. It's an alternative view.
Second question then.
Yeah, but we got Malbim, Targum, and Radak all in concurrence on this, apparently.
Wow. So I have a second question.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that each prophet is talking about a different devastating war that's part of the Gog and Magog episode, but not necessarily in the same, one's in 1940, one was in 1911, one was,
oh gosh, guys, Linda has just aced it, and she got it. So yeah, I'm about to set up why I disagree with Malbim. Okay. So let's say we're going according to the Targum and Radak, right? Because we have Targum is usually from the time of the Talmudic times, and Radak is one of the top three Tanakh commentaries. Malbim's probably fourth or fifth among the hierarchy, starting with Rashi, then Radak and Metzudas David. So Radak, quoting Targum, says this is happening in Transjordan, apparently. Okay, so now Malbim says this is Gog and Magog. It's a parallel to Ezekiel 39. Yeah. And I'm going to disagree with that for a reason, because of what is the idea here. We just quoted verse 45. Let's look at that again. So my claim is that in verse 45 of chapter 11 indicates if it is in Transjordan, then this is not talking about Gog and Magog necessarily, as we know it from Ezekiel and Zechariah. Just another of the evil kings of the north and south clashing, and
don't you have to include 44 in that? But news from the east and north will alarm him, and he will say, "Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness!"
Right. So Uh, Again, there could be many people who do that. The idea of Malum is to connect this to Gog and Magog. But if we
Uh-huh.
connect it and to Ezekiel 39, but if we connect it to Ezekiel 39:11, so then it's not no longer um Armageddon. Um it is in the territory of Gad. Now again, let's look at the literal verse of 45 here in Daniel 11. He would pitch his tent between the seas and the holy covenant mountain. Okay. So again, the interpretation is, I would interpret that seas. Okay, so this should be Armageddon, right? Because literally speaking, it's more natural to say it's in Megiddo, because that's between the Mediterranean and Kinneret, between seas, two seas, right? It's plural seas. You get it?
Uh-huh.
So the Peshuta Shalmikra is not like to relate it to something in the territory of Gad. So therefore, if the territory of Gad is the place of the of destruction of Gog, so it's not referring to this. So in other words, if Megiddo is not the place of Gog, it could be the place of another war ending. You understand? So again, there's an ebb and flow here, but there's an economy of occurrence, right? Either it's this way or that way. So uh, if Gog is literal, it has to be a literal attack on the land of Israel. Then it's possible it's either Megiddo, Armageddon, or it is in territory of Gad. Okay.
May I
No,
ask a
but
third
how do
question?
you but let me just finish. How do you explain its territory of Gad according to Daniel 11:45, which says between the seas? Now, from between Kinneret and the next sea, right? If you have to be east of the sea of one sea, right? So then you're talking about what, the Gulf of the Persian Gulf. So
Which would be the end of the prophesied end of Iran, as Hashem has prophesied previously with the other prophets.
right. So now, if that's the case, in other words, you could interpret the Targum and Radak opinion of Gog and Magog occurring. Maybe it's like in Basra, in Iraq, close to
Holy
close to,
cannolis.
or it already partially happened with the war between Iran and Saddam Hussein. So the parts of this prophecy has been occurring since possibly the 1980s. It's interesting ideas. But again, remember, I'm going back to the first thing I quoted today. Remember the Gemara that says the only major thing that occurs between now and Mashiach happening is a Shibud Malchuyos Bilvad, not being subjected to the rule of the nations. Israel has freedom to protect itself, which corresponds to the role of Mashiach ben Yosef occurring nowadays. And Israel has the right to build its own temple, corresponding to the role of Mashiach ben David. Okay. Those are the two key factors to show us that Israel has independence from the nations trying to rule over them and keep them from their destiny. Everything else is flexible and open to interpretation and could refer to a different war, or maybe a war that's already happened. And if it's referring to end time war, who says it couldn't be a war that happened in 1980 instead of 2020, right?
Right.
So fascinating, very fascinating.
Oh, wow.
Exactly. So therefore, if we're now interpreting the Targum Radak opinion that Gog and Magog occurs between the seas and the left hand western sea is Galilee, therefore it makes sense this occurred in the Persian War with Iraq already. That's my interpretation, but based on history that's happening. And again, because we have this principle that only things which could interfere with Israel's independence could interfere with Messianic times, and therefore must occur literally. Fascinating. Okay. Any questions? Russell, you want to read a particular verse or
Well, yeah, Teresa has this has the book.
No, I was just, if you needed some help to relieve your voice reading out of Ezekiel's commentary, I have that Art Scroll White series.
Oh, thank you. Right. Well, no, those are the two quotes from the Art Scroll Tanakh series, but good to know. Yeah, and so in on verse 12, we're gonna focus more on the commentaries here in the blue edition.
Okay.
Okay, and that's Linda's job, but it's good to know Russell and Teresa have more of the Tanakh series books. If we have any other color commentaries, we need from that. Okay, but just fascinating ideas here. So then, therefore, redirecting ourselves. Therefore, I'm submitting that if Gog and Magog must be literal, and there are rabbis who like to interpret that it must be literal, and if you read the book of Ezekiel, those chapters 38 and 39, it really sounds like he's trying to say literal stuff, not like it's allegory. Okay, it sounds literal. But again, if it's an allegory, how do you know unless it happens or not happen? Ezekiel is a truthful prophet, so therefore, if it doesn't happen, we must say it is an allegory. But we don't know that yet in this point in history. Okay. All right. So I move that we continue on to chapter 12. Any dissenting votes? Okay. All right. Here we go. Chapter 12. So there are 13 verses here, and God willing, we're completing the book of Daniel today. Cool stuff. Okay. Now I'm going to read the original Hebrew. And Ernestine, are you prepared to translate more, or do we need a backup translator? You still got your energy?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Here, let's go in the original prophecy of the Hebrew. Okay, I'm going to read verses 1 through 4 because that is the end of this prophecy. So the prophecy that started in chapter 10 concludes here in chapter 12, verse 4. Thank God for the recorded video, so you could do a review of the past couple classes, so we could all be easier to follow it. If you're because perhaps a week later, it's hard to keep track of it, but thank God you could we give you an alternative to a potential Netflix binge. You could Daniel binge in a good way. Okay, so here we go. Uvesahi Yamod Michael Hasar Hagadol Omed al Bnei Amecha Vayisa Ace Sarah Asher Lo Nihiyasa Mihios Goy Ad Ha'ace Hahi Vesahi Yamalet Amecha Kal Nimtza Kesuv Basefer Rabim Mi Yeshene Admas Afar Yakitsu Ela Lachaye Olam Vela Lacharafos Lediron Olam Vamaskilim Yazhiru Kuzor Harakia Umatstike Harabim Kochovim Olam Vlad. Okay, please translate through the first 4 verses of Daniel 12, Ernestine.
At that time, Michael will stand, the great heavenly prince who stands in support of the members of your people, and there will be a time of trouble such as there had never been since there was a nation until that time. But at that time, your people will escape. Everything that is found written in this book will occur. Many of those who sleep in the dusty earth will awaken, these for everlasting life, and these for shame and for everlasting abhorrence. The wise will shine like the radiance of the firmament, and those who teach righteousness to the multitude will shine like the stars forever and ever. As for you, Daniel, obscure the matters and seal the book until the time of the end. Let many muse and let knowledge increase.
Very good. Okay. So we're going to be discussing, we're going to go into the commentaries here more heavily. There's fascinating three different topics here. First of all, we're going to learn more about the guardian angel of Israel, Michael, and second, we're going to learn about the resurrection of the dead in verse 2. And third, verse 3 encourages people to teach ethics. Right? Well, remember what Perky of us ethics of the Father says. Speaking whoever encourages the masters to do good, no sin will come upon their hand, and whoever encourages the masses to sin, they will not be given the means to repent. So here it's a verse in Tanakh teaching us the ethical concept about if a person does teach ethics publicly, they don't try to talk about people's rights to kill babies, for example. Laughing because of the perversity, but not because of the it's not in a laughing manner. But the point is, if we teach morals and ethics, so all of us could become like the stars forever and ever. As far as those people in the small part of history before Mashiach came, remember Mashiach is forever. So these 6,000 years before Mashiach, 5,790. Or whatever the case may be. So that these years are the time of the ancient ones. We're the last generation of the ancient ones. So in the period of the ancient ones, these are the honor roll of the people who encourage ethics and morals. So hopefully people are awake to be aware of stuff. When there's when there's an ethical problem that the ending result is bloodshed, people should be on the right side of history. If they just heard their friends say it, they should still do the research. I heard a disturbing statistic that in many cases less than 10% of college students are reviewing sources and debunking potential lies on themselves. They're relying on their friends or teachers for whatever they believe. Which is terrifying when you have some of these cycles in in campuses across the world. But when you see the end result is bloodshed, so you should take a step back and say, oh, if I don't research anything else, I want to find out is a embryo really alive or not before there's an abortion. Does it really feel pain or not before the abortion? In both cases, the answer, of course, is yes, yes. But so it's just this is the time for people challenge whatever you believe. Make sure it's according to the ethics and morals of the Torah. If you don't know any Torah, make sure it's according to the ethics and morals of basic common sense and humanity. Once you know that a little baby can feel the pain when they're being aborted, so it should be an easy choice to be against abortion. And there's videos nowadays. Groups are showing people videos of, for the first time they see an abortion, the baby in agony and the ultrasound, and they were pro-abortion before, now they're pro-life. So these kind of things, if nobody's helping you to make these choices, start to transition yourself towards your own research. Make sure you're on the right side of history. And anybody who does this, you don't have to even teach a big class. Just post on your social media, if you have that, that you support innocent people not dying and stuff like that. I mean, it's just basic stuff. I mean, and then everyone in that category is like the stars to shine forever. The generosity of the merciful God is amazing. So it doesn't say anyone who becomes a Torah scholar, goes to yeshiva, gets rabbinical ordination, teaches a Torah class online. It says anybody who teaches righteousness to the multitudes, right? So that's amazing. Okay, so now and finally in verse 4, and again we're going to do the commentary on verses 1 and 2, but in verse 4, the idea is that let many muse and let knowledge increase. Okay, so the way Daniel was told to hide it, right? So therefore, this is related to the way the rabbi said, do not calculate the ends. It was basically like a curse put on people who calculate the end times. But that, again, that's explained. The rabbis only meant to calculate it in a way that for sure will disappoint people. It doesn't mean that if you're in the end times and you see Mashiach coming down the road, it doesn't mean you ignore it because you don't want to calculate the end times. It's just a matter of Matthias. It's what things are actually occurring. Historic things are occurring in our generation, and we're just taking note of it. That is not a calculation. Further, we have the Medrash that I quoted before, Medrash Tehillim, that describes that the end of days will be, very soon, within the next 5 years or so. And we described previously a Medrash Rabbah that Mashiach will be the cause, his righteousness will be the cause to hasten the redemption before the end of days. So that means in the next 4 years or so, we can anticipate Mashiach ben David coming. And this fits in with again, the interpretation of Rabbi Mendel Kesser. Okay, so, all right, but this is amazing. The verse says, let many muse and let knowledge increase. So to speculate about it without calculating as a matter of faith, to speculate on it is not forbidden. We have the verse here to permit it. So you have to understand that prohibition of the rabbis. You have to understand in context. I remember I was teaching about the end times approaching, and somebody objected to me. You can't teach about the end times. There's a curse. So again, there also is a verse here explicitly from the angel telling Daniel, recorded by Daniel, let many muse and let knowledge increase. Explicit, right? Don't need an interpretation. For the prohibition of the rabbis, you need to understand what they mean. Otherwise, there's no prohibition. The prohibition of the rabbis is only based on logic. It's not. You can't have a chok, a test of faith in a commandment of the rabbis. You can only have that among the Torah commandments. Like God gave a ununderstandable commandment to Abraham to sacrifice his son, even though God said he doesn't want such things ever, and it's abhorrent to him. And in Jeremiah, God says that he would never think of that he would desire it. Jeremiah 19. So obviously, it's open interpretation, and of course, there was no such actual commandment. It was just a test of faith. And Thank God. So again, Abraham's fulfillment of that ethical choice, and that's the imperative for us in this time. And just imagine, so many people spend their life, they just run from this restaurant to that restaurant, from this movie to that movie. And what do they do in their life? But had they even just posted, "Let's be ethical and moral," okay, and they hear a friend screaming and running away from them, but but at least they'll be in the category of the stars of the early part of human history, those that those the almost 6,000 years that we're in, that people had the choice to be ethical and moral in a time when there's a false rationale saying that the opposite of ethics and morals is a legitimate option, which of course it isn't. The end result is evil can't fully describe in these circumstances. Okay, so now let's go into the commentary in verses 1 and 2. Linda, are you prepared?
Yes, sir.
All right, lots of reading. Okay, so first we'll learn about the defending archangel of Israel, and in his discussion um, with Satan. Okay, we're going to learn in the commentary here, quoting the Medrash, and then in verse 2, we'll go into discussion about the resurrection of the dead. Okay, so and how what's going to happen when that happens. Okay, so please read the commentary, page 142, verse 1.
Will stand. Michael will, as usual, stand up to defend the Jews, Eben Ezra, Mazuzdos, and Malbim. Eben Ezra adds that this verse is an elaboration of 7:9, where he translates, thrones were thrown down. The heavenly thrones appointed for the patron angels of the four kingdoms were overturned. Michael, in his role of protector of his people, will finally succeed in overthrowing the kingdoms. He will desist from speaking on behalf of Israel when he sees the Holy One, blessed be he, deliberating on whether to destroy this great nation, the kingdom of the north, because of Israel. Rashi. The role of Michael is
So you see that even an enemy of God, he first has the angels deliberated as a court case up in heaven. Even an enemy of God, he doesn't just say, "I'm going to get these suckers." He's he's uh he's a merciful father, and even if some of his children, God forbid, became evil, he's still a merciful father. He wants to give them some sort of a chance, so he lets the angels deliberate. You understand? Okay, please continue.
The role of Michael is to defend Israel against its detractors. See Shemos Rabbah, 18:5, R. Margiles, Malachi Elion. Michael and Samiel, Satan, stand before the divine presence. Satan slanders Israel and Michael defends Israel. Though Satan tries to slander, Michael silences him. Shemos Rabbah 18:5. The Midrash, Ruth Rabbah, I can't say that second word. Pasikita,
Pasichta,
Pasikta,
which
1.
means the introduction.
Okay. Continues, the Holy One, blessed be he, said to Michael, are you silent? Do you not defend my children? I swear that I will speak about justice and rescue my children. With what merit? With the merit that you allowed my world to remain created by accepting my Torah. For had you not accepted my Torah, I would have returned the world to a state of astonishing emptiness.
Okay, and now the mini paragraph on the right-hand column, who stands?
Who stands in support of the members of your people? For he, Michael, insists upon Israel's needs. Shemos Rabbah 18:5.
Okay, so now I want to mention Samael, paragraph parentheses Satan. Samael is also the archangel of Edom. So he's not just a prosecuting attorney. He's also a a defense attorney for the Edomites, which includes Amalekites, etc. Because the Amalekites and Edomites are the ones given the most power to potentially destroy Israel. And there's a unanimity of opinion that the leader of the Nazis was from the Amalekites, and therefore the most important satanic players in the preparation for to try to prevent Mashiach from coming would be included in the among the Edomite descendants. Now this is amazing for two factors. Remember that Esav, Edom, is the son of an extremely righteous man, and grandson of an extremely righteous man, Abraham and Isaac, right? So to have Satan to drop everything to become a guardian angel to the rebellious son, Esau, is rather amazing. So now this is a possible implication that that Satan does not have to be literally slain, even though it says Mashiach will slay Satan. It doesn't necessarily have to be literal. The main thing Mashiach has to do is show us how to break the false arguments and the rationales to be unethical and unmoral. That's destroying the power of Satan. So then Satan can his only job left is to be Samael, the guardian angel of Esau. So therefore, that's the main thing. Right. Elvis asked, Rabbi, if we're not to predict the end times, why is it given a yearly date of 4 to 5 years from present where Mashiach is expected to arrive? Because I'm quoting the Chazal themselves. Chazal told us, curse is the one who calculates Mashiach. It doesn't say curse is the one who explains when Mashiach is coming. Okay, it's making a prediction not based on prophecy, but the sages themselves give us the secret. Okay, and we quoted that before. So okay, this is on Psalm. I believe it's Psalm 90. Yeah, Psalm 90, verse 15. Samachinu kimos inni sanu shenu serenu ra'a. Gladden us according to the days you afflicted us, the years when we saw evil. So the Medrash says on this verse, Moses is asking of God, how is it possible that Israel was punished for all those years in Egypt, in the Egyptian exile? We see by the exiles of Babylon and Rome that Israel first did some horrible sin, like idolatry, for example, and then they were exiled many years. But by Egypt, they were enslaved for over 200 years, and without a sin. Egypt pretended that that generation, the Pharaoh was, really despicable. So they pretended that they needed help, and they said, "Whoever's really patriotic, please come and help us build this building, probably a pyramid or something." And so Israel volunteered, and then, like a Nazi, they changed the story and said, whoever volunteered must now stay here forever, as a slave to Pharaoh. So so it was a ruse. It wasn't really Israel's sin, you know. So therefore, Moses said, "How is it possible that they suffered over 200 years? Where's the justice in that? Exile could only be because of clear and deliberate rebellion. Exile is considered the equivalent of death. Slavery also is considered the equivalent of death. So how could Israel have a death penalty for no sin? It's unjust. And the God of the God of the world is just. So therefore, Moses prayed, Psalm 90, verse 15, gladness according to the years, the days you afflicted us, the years when we saw evil. So so in other words, he said, uh, the exile in Egypt was unjust if it's not taken off of the wait for Mashiach time. So therefore, all the years of the exile of Egypt must be deleted from the years to wait for Mashiach time. So what's the natural waiting years of Mashiach time? Everything else, barring everything else, 6,000 years. The year 6,000. We're now in the year 5745. Okay, so now, how long exactly was the exile, the slavery in Egypt? According to Rashi, first verse of chapter 2 in Exodus, Rashi, that was 210 years. He quotes the Medrash on that. 210 years from 6,000 brings us to the year 5760. Sorry, 5790, right? 6,000 minus 210, 5790. This year is 5745.
So it's
Ergo,
85.
5 years from now is
85,
is
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
what?
5785.
Sorry, 5785. Yes. Ergo, it's 5 years away from the time that the Chazals, the holy sages of the Talmud, said in the Medrash that is the end of days. End of days not being the time of destruction, but being the end of days where evil may reign. The people, there's no longer any excuses to choose evil. It's just it's all the fake news is broken down, and people make all the choices based on ethics and morals, and therefore even before somebody becomes a great scholar, they're already serving God at a higher level than most people in history. Okay, so now so Elvis made another secondary comment, but how can it be so certain now when there's been a number of mistakes made about when Mashiach will come? All those calculations, again, for those what was the leniency to calculate Mashiach, right? Who specifically risk ignoring the words of the sages. In other words, when did the sages say it's okay to calculate Mashiach coming? Only when you say, here's a good time, auspicious time for Mashiach to come. Not when you say it's a prophecy that Mashiach must come in 1985, which never occurred, right? You can't say that, because if it doesn't happen, so now you're setting up people to have broken hearts when they should be making ethical and moral choices. So Mashiach shouldn't be the concept of Mashiach and redemption should not be a cause to give up morals and ethics. The end of days is when the end of days evil may reign. The worldwide ethics and morals unification, that is the symbol of Mashiach time. And of course, incidentally, it fulfills the concept of Israel being having freedom to defend themselves and freedom of religion as well. So when there have been a number of mistakes about when Mashiach will come, all of those calculations were intended, if by a kosher source, we were intended not as a final date of when Mashiach comes. Just, we're in a good category, right? We're in a good time. Like, for example, I came from Chicago, so if you're a Chicago Cubs fan, right? So if everyone said, "Oh, now now for certain they're going to win the World Series, right? So 100 years later, maybe now they're going to win the World Series. So it depends how you do it. It's even though, for example, when there was the era of Ryan Sandberg, right, and Andre Dawson, the Cubs looked pretty powerful, and they made the playoffs. They still didn't win the World Series, so it only happened more recently. So again, that's what the mistake has been, that people were, if they were trying to be kosher about what the sages said, they were emphasizing it less, and maybe people heard it and they ran with it and said, "Oh, the Rabbi so and so said Mashiach has to come in this or that day." It's entirely different with this case, because we have there's no more real estate for the end of days to keep being delayed. You understand? Again, end of days being end of days where evil may reign, the fulfillment of Mashiach time, not something that's cataclysmic. So, Elvis, does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yes, Rabbi. Thank you very much.
Great question. Very good. Okay. So, yes. So if so that's why I'm saying Mashiach could come anytime in the next 4 years. I'm not saying he has to come year 1, year 2, year 3, or year 4 in the next 4 years. He could come anytime. However, we did discuss earlier in the book my calculation about just an interpretation of what Daniel's prophecy said about we discussed the years, the 2,300 years after Daniel's prophecy, which takes us to the year 1929, the stock market crash, which caused depression in America and even worse in areas in Israel and in Europe, which led to the Nazi Party's rise and led to the trouble for Israel. Okay, so now let's get back into the verses here. Yeah, so now onto the topic of the resurrection of the dead. Linda, we only read about half of the commentary here in the ArtScroll edition of Daniel on verse 1. So just be aware of that. Please feel free to research more. But we discussed the parts that are, I think, most important to cover under this circumstance. Now we're going to go into verse 2. And again, just read half of it. But the commentary in verse 2 is even longer than the commentary in verse 1.
Which part? Where do I start? Where do I stop?
Okay, so the left-hand column and the last 3 verses, or the first 3 verses on the right-hand column. Okay, so ending with the phrase illustrates this. So that's where you end. So
Okay.
Start from many of those who sleep.
Many of those who sleep. He does not say all who sleep, because all would include all of mankind, and he made this promise only to Israel. Therefore he says many, and when he says these for everlasting life and these for shame, his intent is not that among those who are revivified, some will be rewarded and some punished. For those who deserve punishment will not be revivified at the time of the redemption. Rather, he means that those who will awaken will have everlasting life, and those who will not awaken will be for shame and for everlasting abhorrence. For all the righteous, including those who repented, will live. Only the non-believers and those who died without repentance will remain. All this will happen at the time of redemption. Our Sadia Gion, In Immunos Videlos, chapter 7, see Ibn Ezra. Rambam, Perush, Ha-Mishnah to Sanhedrin 10 agrees with our Sadia Gion that the revivification is destined only for the righteous and bases his belief on the Midrash. This is also the view of Rambam and our Chisdai, Crisias, cited by Arbinel, Shahar HaGumel in Kesiv HaRamban, Volume 1, page 52, where the wording is ambiguous. See Or Hashem 344, page 77. Arbinel, May Nei, Ha Yeshua 11a, disagrees with the above and believes that the revocation will include all of mankind. He notes two purposes in this. One, it would be most unfair to all the generations who hoped for the Mashiach if only those who incidentally had the good fortune to be alive at the time of the redemption would be privileged to enjoy the benefits they merited. And the enemies of Israel will also come alive in order to witness their ultimate downfall. 2, the nations of mankind that will be revivified will realize the folly of their beliefs and will come to acknowledge the one true belief, as seen from the words of Zephaniah 3:9. For then I will change the nations to speak a clear language, so that they will all proclaim the name of Hashem to worship him with a united resolve and many other prophecies. An intermediary opinion is adopted by our Kistai, Krisas, or Hashem 344, page 77. Only the righteous and the wicked will be revivified in order to bring to its culmination the process of divine retribution. For many people, however, the rewards of the world of the soul, paradise, and whatever material benefits they have attained in their lifetimes suffice for their merits. Since the body, too, plays a role in earning the reward or punishment, divine providence demands that the body also receive its just reward, hence revivification. A Talmudic parable illustrates this.
Very good. Okay, let's pause there. Okay, again, reading the English, many of those who sleep in the dusty earth will awaken. These for everlasting life, and these for shame and for everlasting abhorrence. So the majority opinion seems to be it's referring to an allegory that people who awaken in the world to come referring to everlasting shame refers to those who wake up in the world of souls, right? So when someone enters the world of souls, it's like they just woke up. That seems to be the majority interpretation. However, for the most literal interpretation, which is not always the case in the book of Daniel, right? Often Daniel gives a allegory and then there's a literal interpretation, also in the same book. So it could be either way. But for the literal interpretation, one would have to go according to the Barbanel, that also the wicked will rise and they will be they will see that they're about to go back to the grave. They lost out on the wonderful things that God had planned for everybody else. You know, so just to see to show the cruel people that you wanted to be cruel instead of have any semblance of mercy. So this is what you're losing out on. You know, so at least they understand why God's justice called for this. But again, by majority view, that kind of thing is not necessary. It's already covered when they awake in the world of souls. The world of souls being where people go after passing away in this world. Okay, so that's a very interesting discussion. So that's some of the different perspectives on that. Let's continue on into later in the book. Let's do the conclusion of the book, actually. Okay. All right, Ernestine, are you ready? I'm going to
I'm ready.
okay, just Elvis, is your hands raising again, or you had another question, or no?
Yes, Rabbi. I had
Okay.
a question. Let me ask. This is my first time here, Rabbi.
Oh,
I'm sorry I wasn't introduced, but my name is Elvis Price. I come to know about this group and this study through Russell Kurt online on Facebook there, and he has invited me a few times, and this is my first time actually attending. I
okay.
reside in Florida,
Mhm.
and I am a benign, no, about a few months now, less than a year,
Mhm.
and so I'm still learning a lot. I attend a shire, a shire
Shior.
shire, let's
Right.
pronounce it. Uh,
Shior. Mhm.
yeah,
That's a class.
yeah, on actually it's on Sundays with Rabbi Tani Burton and
Mhm.
some others and stuff. Some others there that are Benign Noack and others. Um, yeah, I'm very fascinated by Daniel's vision and what's being said here in these chapters. And we're just talking about the resurrection of the dead, um, presumably the righteous and as well as the wicked, correct?
Right,
Um,
according to Barbanel. Right.
right, because it says here that the wicked is well and the wicked will be
Right. The most natural literal interpretation is according to Barbanel.
yeah, they will be forever shamed and I guess they'll be living with their shame um, for eternity, I gather. Their shame and their everlasting contempt, they say. So my question, though, recently I have learned from another rabbi that our souls are eternal. That the flesh and blood physical body is just actually, you know, it's just a vessel. It's just a core. But our consciousness or our soul is eternal, lives on, and given the vastness of Hashem's creation, I mean, creation is not just Earth, but it's the universe as well. Um, I was wondering, why is it if we are like eternal beings, kind of like these orbitals or astral beings as spiritual beings, that ultimately for eternity will be confined in physical flesh and blood human bodies for eternity?
Right. A very good question, and this is a discussion actually between the Arizal and the Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of translations of his books, like Path of the Just and The Way of God, are by Feldheim Publishers. Uh, so, uh, so according to Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, the, after the resurrection of the dead, the eventually the bodies pass away, and the people have to go to the world of souls for their ultimate reward, because the human body cannot contain enough joy for the amount of reward God wants to give us. God wants to reward us hundreds of times greater than the greatest possible joy on earth. And one of the places we know this is because God says in the Ten Commandments, he punishes onto the third or fourth generation and rewards onto 2,000 generations, right? At least 1,000 generations. Right? So, but in the context of Ten Commandments, it says 2,000 generations. So therefore, 2,000 divided by 4, 500. So that means the reward is of the world to come for the righteous is 500 times greater than the worst kind of punishment there is, according to God's system of a loving Father as creator of the universe. So that kind of joy is impossible to reward in a human body with all its frailties, according to Ramchal. So therefore, people have to go to the world of souls to enjoy. But since through their bodies they did many commandments, so the body has to be rewarded. People before Mashiach comes, some people were sick most of their lives. Some people were tortured to death. So they have to be rewarded with physical joy, physical pleasures. Spiritual joy, according to Ramchal, is mostly reserved for the world of souls, where there will be the 500 times greater than the joy possible in a human body. We see an indication of this phenomenon Ramchal is talking about from the idea that if a person laughs too much, they start to cry. Their body cannot handle the amount of joy that they're trying to have at that moment when they're crying have tears of joy, right? So so that's just an indication that the body can only handle so much reward, and God's intention for reward is clear from His commandments, many times more than we're capable of enjoying. So that's Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. According to Arizal, same Arizal that for example, based on his siddur, the Lubavitchers have their siddur. So that Arizal, so he said that the reason when after Tchias HaMesim, the human body will be strengthened supernaturally by God, so every human body will be able to contain that kind of a joy. So every human body will be capable after the great resurrection of having 500 times greater joy than we're currently capable. So
Okay.
that's the debate, and there's no definitive prophecy telling us the difference between these two.
Yeah, that's very intriguing to me, Rabbi. It's I like it. But it brings to mind the reincarnation. And of course, that some souls, or I don't know if all of them, have been reincarnated over time since the creation of Adam and Eve. And if that's such, if there's some souls, a large amount, or all of them that are reincarnated and have had past lives, then the question becomes, well, what happens then? Which life is being judged as to to be bestowed a reward then? I mean, obviously, let's say, for example, I don't know, and perhaps I was reincarnated a few times. Perhaps I was Idi Amin at some point in time, and I did some bad things, killed a lot of people, and just wasn't a very good person at all, very evil.
May I just say, how dare you? Okay, please continue.
Right. But, through the reincarnation process, I was refined. I became more and more righteous, having the experiences that the life experiences, and learn it. I can't say learn from mistakes, because if you do not recall them mistakes, but somehow your inner being, your inner soul recognizes, well, okay, I need to be more in tune with Hashem and what He expects of me, and you become more righteous over these reincarnated lives. So the question
Right.
becomes, I guess I'm kind of like figuring out my own answer. I guess it'd be more
Well,
like a cumulative type of thing. Yes, a cumulative type of grading, I suppose. Yeah.
well, let me give you one idea as of like a pool of thought towards your road of self-discovery and you know feeling your neshama, how your soul. But so now there's a concept of splintering of a soul that over the course of every generation, the same soul has a different splinter that becomes different people. So therefore, you could have multiple versions of the same soul alive at the same time for ultimate reward. So where's evidence of this? I'll even give you a proof of this. Perhaps you've heard the famous medrash that talks about the soul of Adam is split between the three letters of the word Adam spells Adam David Mashiach, Adam David and Mashiach. So therefore, and then there's the Gemara. It's also found in Gemara in Sukkah 52 that Mashiach and King David will be sitting next to each other in the world to come. So we see from that a splintered soul is with its other part in the world to come. Since Adam, David, and Mashiach are three parts of the same soul.
A splintered soul?
Yes. Interesting. So if that's true about such important figures in world history as the original human progenitor, as the writer of Psalms, as the Messianic king, so therefore anyone could be a splintered soul, and probably the more average souls probably has multiple splinters because it takes a few attempts to get to be fully righteous, right? If someone was a wicked conqueror who killed the innocent, so then they don't have a chance of the world to come, so they have to reboot themselves, so to speak.
And
but to the splintering of the soul is not necessarily in the classic sense of reincarnation, as perhaps you've heard of reincarnation, even from a normative Kabbalistic perspective. So reincarnation can be a form of punishment. It can be a form of reward. As a form of punishment, to give reward, like somebody, right? Russell's saying soul roots. So to give reward, a punishment that is a reward, someone doesn't deserve to rise to the end of days for the resurrection to have the ultimate reward. So God makes them become reincarnated as a dog, and as a dog, they eventually are killed violently, perhaps run over by a vehicle, and that way they have atonement, so they could be worthy to have the life of the world to come. So that's the more classical conception of reincarnation. But the splintered soul perspective is that it's going to take a few attempts for this guy to get into heaven. So therefore, I'm going to give him several bodies to do it. In the case of Adam, David, Mashiach, it's going to take 3 times for this soul to make the right choice that should have been made in the Garden of Eden. You understand? So Adam made his first choice was after naming the animals. I mean, that was his correct choice, but basically his first choice was about guarding the on his first day of watching, he made a wrong choice. David, he was perfect except in the matter of Uriah, without a Sanhedrin, he executed the first husband of Bathsheba, who would become the queen mother, foremother of the mother of Solomon, the foremother of Mashiach. So because of that one mistake, so he wasn't perfect. in his role. Again, King Solomon wrote twice, once in the recorded in the Book of Kings, and once recorded in his writings, that there's not a person who does only good and doesn't sin. So therefore, it's King David only did one mistake, but in context of his role as a king. So therefore, it opened up for Mashiach. It says about Mashiach, as a king, he'll be perfect. But it also says in Ezekiel that he'll bring a sacrifice for himself and the people. So it means even Mashiach will have some sort of sin sometime in his life, but is as in the role of a king, he'll be perfect. So and again, Adam was the first king, right, of the humans. His role was to not allow foreign philosophy, but he made the wrong choice. King David, his role was to be the perfect forefather, of the kings of Israel. Because he couldn't do that, remember the destruction, according to the Talmud, the three evil kings of Judah. Most of the kings of Judah were righteous. The three evil ones, Achaz, Menashe, and Ammon, were considered worse than the northern kings who did evil for 200 years. So because of that, was only allowed to be born into the family of David because of David's mistake. So therefore, that's why it's important to be a perfect king among the rulers of the Davidic line, to be the forefather of righteous kings. And we see that it says by King David, his son and his grandson will also be perfect kings. So, in other words, the fulfillment of the idea, the human king of the world being perfect, to follow God's word.
And Rabbi, sorry to interrupt, but
Okay.
in the world to come, are you saying the Mashiach will offer it, make a sin offering, or are you saying that in the world to come, even though we know
no, not in the world to come. That's Mashiach time is now. Before you finish your question, let me first
okay.
answer. So in Elio Rabbah, the Medrash by Elio Hanavi, son of Elio. So it discusses that there's three parts of history. There is there's before Mashiach comes. There's the days of Ben David, the days of Mashiach Ben. He's only called the son of David. He's not called Mashiach in the Medrash of Elijah, the prophet. And then the world to come. So the days of Ben David is a separate epoch in this era, and it's a debate whether the Techias Mesim is at the start of Mashiach's time or towards the end of Mashiach's time. So it's very interesting.
Oh, okay,
But
okay.
right, so it's just a question of it's going to have a little of this, a little of that, kind of like Chol Hamoed, it's half a holiday, half a weekday, for certain purposes.
Mhm.
And so the days of Ben David will be like a transition period. Not all the rules of the world come occurring yet. Not all the rules of this world are still in place.
Mhm.
That only happens by King David, the Mashiach from King David, not by the Mashiach from Ben Yosef. So any ruler of Israel until Mashiach ben David comes, of course we'll know when he comes exactly. Then it's not yet. It's still a part of the first portion of this world. It's completely olam hazeh from that perspective.
Okay. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Sorry for monopolizing so much time.
No, it's great. And so again, if people are watching this on a video after it's recorded, so they can pause it and continue it the next day. So it's okay if we go a little bit longer.
Okay.
All right, but let's conclude the book today. Okay, I'm going to read the Hebrew, and then Ernestine, please be ready. translate verses 5 through the end of the chapter, verse 13.
Oh my God. 13. Okay.
Okay, let me do the Hebrew. V'reisi ani Daniel, v'hine shnaim achirim, omdim echad hena, lifa'as hayor v'echad hena, lifa'as hayor, v'yomer la'ish levush habadim asher mima'al lememe hayor ad masai kates haplos, v'shmas ha'ish levush habadim asher mima'al lememe hayor, v'yarem yamino usmolo el hashemayim, v'yishava b'chei ha'olam, Gilamoid Moadim Vachetzi Chalos Napetz Yad Am Kodesh Tichlena Cholela. Bani Shamati Vlovin Vomara Adoni Ma Acharis Ele. Viomer Lech Daniel Kisumim Vachasumim Hadvarim Ad Ace Kates. Yisbaru Vyislabnu Torfu Rabim Virshiu Rashaim Vlo Yavinu Kol Rashaim Maskilim Yavinu. Me'es Husar Hatamid Lases Shikuts Shomem Yamim Elef Masayim Sishim. Ashrei Mechaka Viagia Yamim Elef Shalosh Meos Shaloshim Bachamisha. Vatalech Laketz Vasanuach Vasamod Legoralacha Laketz Samin. Okay, please translate, Ernestine, verses 5 through 13. Daniel chapter 12.
Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, two others are standing, one on this side of the river bank, and one on the side of the river bank. One said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, how long until the concealed end? I heard the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, as he lifted his right hand and his left hand to the heavens and swore by the life source of the world that after a period and a half, upon the completion of the fragmenting of the hand of the holy people, all these would be finished. I heard this, but I did not comprehend it. So I said, My Lord, what is the end of these matters? He said, Go, Daniel, for these matters are obscured and sealed until the time of the end. They will be elucidated, clarified, and refined by many people. The wicked will act wickedly, and none of the wicked will understand, but the wise will understand. From the time the daily offering was removed and the mute abomination put in place, 1,290 years. Praiseworthy is he who awaits and reaches 1,335 years. As for you, go to your end. You will rest, then arise for your portion at the end of days.
Very nice. Thanks, Ernestine. Okay, God gave us so many beautiful books in Tanakh. It's hard to it's hard to leave a book. It's so we learn so much from this. But just to mention, again, the difference between understanding in the end of days and not understanding in the end of days is based on ethical and moral bearing. Okay. Verse 10, they will be lucid, clarifying, and refined by many people. The wicked will act wickedly, and none of the wicked will understand, but the wise will understand. It doesn't say the righteous. Even if they made mistakes themselves. Even if, for example, somebody used to support abortion, but now they know that a baby's feeling agony when during an abortion, they're not going to do it anymore. So they're not yet even fully righteous, but they have understanding. But they're only understanding it because they're not denying it. There is like a spirit. Ron Soloveitchik described a related matter as a spirit of rebellion among people nowadays. But so there's it's become even worse than it was 30 years ago. It's now a spirit of rebellion against truth, and only a person who has ethical moral bearing can even make the right choice. There are people with no knowledge of what some of the insults are using. They're like Trump has a proven track record of being good to Jews, and people calling him something related to a Nazi, fascist, all these crazy stuff. So, and of course, also he has Orthodox Jewish grandchildren. So it's preposterous, some of these things that are occurring, and these people are otherwise good people. Many of these supporters of against Trump, they're committed to being against Trump, whether or not he deserves that, the position they're taking, because they're not doing their own research. So just being wise is already not being wicked, right? If you just know the facts, you're not going to support those who are against the truth. And it's really amazing. It's another sign that we're in the end time, is that we see this, and this wasn't so true. Like, I remember 40 years ago, you could turn on a television news and trust what the person was telling you. Okay, this is not a fairy tale. Just imagine what a world like that was. Okay, but it used to be that everybody wanted to report the truth. The truth will get out. Now people want to color the truth this way or that. Right, and it doesn't always help that, for example, some people who know the truth, they're acting like childish and insulting anybody who doesn't know the truth. Just educate people without putting them down, and you'll be more effective that way. Okay. There's another comment or question.
The commentary on verse 10 is really good, about the wicked will act wickedly, and then none will understand it.
You're referring to the blue edition or to the
Yes,
Tanakh edition?
in the blue edition. Yeah.
Okay, so
it goes on to what you were talking about, the wicked and the wise.
oh, pretty good. Okay, so which one, the wicked act wickedly or the wise will understand? Which paragraph?
On 147 down at
Verse 10.
Yeah, verse 10. It's the third paragraph under 10.
Okay, can you read that, Linda?
Oh, okay. The wicked will act wickedly.
Yeah, you literally asked for it. Okay, no offense.
Did I keep opening my mouth, boy? This is back to college. The wicked,
the wicked act wickedly, but the righteous ask for more Torah opportunities, and that's when you got your reward, Linda. Congratulations, Linda! Yay! Okay.
Linda, I would start at the first paragraph there of 10.
And look at that, Teresa gave Linda more mitzvahs. Oh my gosh! Every word of Torah is another mitzvah. Wow, you guys are righteous.
They will be elucidated, clarified, and refined. The reference is to the calculations about the end, Rashi, and refined by many people. Many will be deluded into thinking that their calculations of the end is absolutely refined and free from error, mezuzdos. The wicked will act wickedly. The wicked will fail in their attempts to find the end. But when the time that they have erroneously ascribed to the appointed time comes without the redemption taking place, they will erroneously come to the conclusion that there will, God forbid, be no redemption, Rashi, and none will understand. They will not be capable of understanding. Oh my God, that's what we've said. The end, Rashi. They will not have the humility and understanding to ascribe the fact that the Messiah did not come to errors in their calculation of the end, mezuzdos. But the wise will understand when the time of the end comes or close to it. See above verse 9. The wise will understand to interpret the calculations of the end, Rashi. Perhaps even after the end, the interpretation of the verses in Daniel pointing to it shall remain sealed except to the wise. The wise will understand not to trust their intellect. When Messiah will not have come in the time designated by them, they will remain steadfast in their trust.
So
Metsudos.
when making a calculation, do not, in other words, say it as an act of faith.
Right. Do you want me to finish the 2 paragraphs?
Well, please do.
Rambam, his words are quoted above, 1135, interprets this verse as referring to the many trials and tribulations of the bitter exile. The many will become purified as a result of their steadfast trust during the great trial. Arbenel Maeni Ha Yeshua 11:9 and Malbin understand this as referring to the nations of the world in the period immediately preceding the complete redemption, when the light of the Messiah will already show its signs on the horizon. Many will recognize the true religion and walk in the light of Hashem, but many will stubbornly cling to their convictions and wage war upon Israel with Gog, king of Magog.
Right. And
Sounds like where we are, doesn't it?
and if Gog is not a physical person but an allegory,
Mm-hmm.
so the Gog has already been explained by the rabbis is related to the word uh, Gog, which is referring to a roof in Hebrew. So therefore, and they interpret that as meaning a person who tries to separate between heaven and themselves. They believe they have independence from heaven. Heaven, they have a shield from whatever heaven wants to do of the roof. So they feel cut off from the restraints from heaven. That's what Gog means.
And so could it also mean that these who will stubbornly cling, it's almost as if it's a collective type of thinking.
Right. But it's specifically a secular kind of thought,
Right.
which didn't really exist in when this prophecy occurred, but it certainly exists nowadays. So the philosophy you would need for Gog and Magog to not be literal also exists nowadays. So we're open to any kind of interpretation. Again, all of the tribulations right before Mashiach comes is related to the sins of our generation, not a matter of prophecy. So therefore, some tribulations are not necessary because we don't have those kind of sins in the world, right? We don't have a bunch of people trying to sell idol figurines en masse. I mean, there is of course figurines from Eastern religions that fulfill the evil idolatry, but it's not the biggest problem in the world right now. The biggest problem in the world is just basic telling the truth of between. The most prolific major sin in the world now, again, is abortion. That people have a right to disbelieve that a child suddenly is no longer important because they have a career opportunity. It's spiritually insane, and it's only possible if there's a disconnect from God, and that is represented by the word Gog. So Gog and Magog, we see all these different interpretations, and all these wars mentioned could all be fulfilled in different ways without having to have a physical Gog and Magog. So since the time in the end is hidden, we're not even sure how literal the prophecies in Ezekiel, who's very particular. He gives precise descriptions of the third temple, extreme detail. But he also gives, for example, the prophecy of the heavenly chariot, which is again, it cannot be given as a direct prophecy to people who are not spiritually at that level. So therefore, it had to be an allegory. So, and Zechariah is even more allegorical and less chronological in his prophecies about Gog and Magog. So therefore, the best, clearest prophecy about Gog and Magog is in Ezekiel. But Ezekiel himself, he's not like Isaiah, whose every prophecy is almost every prophecy of Isaiah is literal, like Moses, whereas Ezekiel, there's a significant portions of the book is not necessarily as literal as that, but it does have extremely literal things, such as talking about Ezekiel 18, talking about how God doesn't want the wicked to suffer, etc. So thank God. Okay. Any final questions on this chapter? I will just reiterate. I mentioned that from the time of the construction of the Dome of the Rock in until our decade was 1,335 years. So that year ended the month before October 7th of last year. So until then, Israel was still making choices of can they defend themselves? Should they defend themselves? How soon should they stop defending themselves? Only after October 7th did Israel start to say, we will defend ourselves no matter we have to do it. And Prime Minister Netanyahu said to President Biden, that when Biden threatened to cut off all kinds of aid, he said, we'll do it with our bare hands if we have to, but we will defend ourselves. So that attitude was only like until October 7th, until the end of 1,335 years, was only a temporary fleeting thing that lasted for the course of 2 to 4 weeks throughout Israel's wars. Right? There was always talk about international pressure. They must stop fighting. No, they don't have to stop fighting if they're in danger. But it's like the message wasn't delivered to the secular government of Israel. Again, secular being susceptible to all of the impurity of Gog. So secular is separating from God. Secular is thinking like those who are God's enemies, God forbid. So the idea of Israel not feeling like they are allowed to defend themselves is part of the Gog and Magog, and that ended through the sins of Hamas on October 7th, 2023, which was the first month following 1,335 years from the construction of the Dome of the Rock. And we said previously, here in the Hebrew, it says mute abomination, but shikut shomem, but shomem is without the vav, like it is earlier in the book of Daniel. So therefore, we're not talking about pure idolatry. We're talking about something that is not pure idolatry, but is keeping the temple from being rebuilt. So shikut shomem here in chapter 12 refers, in my opinion, to the monotheistic Dome of the Rock, but it's assumed that the right of it to be there is absolute, even though we know in the prophecies of Ezekiel, there's no way it could be there for in the end of days. Ezekiel, the last chapter of Ezekiel, all the Judea, Samaria, and the Temple Mount have to be there. And we know from Ezekiel chapter 43 that the Temple Mount is a permanent place where God rests his spirit upon. It has to be where the temple was rebuilt. That's Ezekiel 43. So therefore, there's no way around it. Israel has to have the absolute right to defend itself. The fulfillment of the role of Mashiach ben Yosef, which only really Israel was accepting as a nation, led by secular leaders, is only accepting since the past 13 months. Really amazing. There's just a spiritual change in the secular state of Israel, and the second aspect is the freedom of religion to rebuild the temple on its place and on Mount Moriah. That corresponds to Mashiach ben David. Although there are possible interpretations, it's possible midrashim that Mashiach ben Yosef will build the base of Mikdash, and Mashiach ben David will solidify it. Was there another question by Elvis raising your hand?
Yeah,
I've got one too. So when he's done, I have one.
go
Okay.
ahead. Go
Elvis
ahead.
and Linda.
Go ahead.
Okay, ladies first.
It's the commentary, the second paragraph on 12.
Verse 12.
Yes. Our
12.
Baraka said in the name of our Levi, the last Redeemer Messiah will be like the first Redeemer Moshe. Just as the first Redeemer revealed himself and then was hidden for 3 months from when he went to Pharaoh at first until the first plague, Rambam to Exodus 5:22, so the last Redeemer will reveal himself and then be hidden. How long will he be hidden? I have a lot of questions about this paragraph. Rav Takuma said in the name of the rabbis, 45 years as is written, and from when the daily offering was removed, and as is written, happy is he who waits and attains 1,345 years. Ruth Rabbah 5:6 and elsewhere.
Right now, I saw another interpretation. This is not a prophet. You see, you have to be with a medrash. You have to make sure there's no other contradiction before you assume this is the interpretation. And also, we're talking about stuff that, again, we quoted from Rabbi Shmuel. We quoted at the start of this class from the Gemara that the only thing is Israel's separation from being controlled by the nations. It's the only thing that must occur. Okay, so here there's another interpretation that Mashiach would be 45 days, not years.
Ah.
Right.
Right.
I forgot the source of that. I didn't look it up because I wasn't expecting this question. But you guys are keeping me on my toes. But again, 45. It's from
That's
this
what
chapter.
you get for getting well.
But if you look in the literal verse, okay, Peshuta Shel Mikra, we always have to consider that. Asher Machaka B'Yagil Yamim Elef Shalosh Meos Shaloshim V'Chamisha. So previously, when Daniel said days, he always meant years. But if you're going to hide a secret, right?
Yeah.
So you suddenly change days meaning years. You change the key, and that's how you create a special encoding. So this is a possible explanation why there's an alternative theory. 45 is 45 days, which means a month and a half.
Wait, but it's also interesting how you were saying 1,035 years.
Right.
Up until
1,335.
Right. The verse before years meant year, days meant years. In this verse, the days could mean days, and in fact, it's hard to interpret any kind of interpretation where Mashiach disappears for 45 years. Why would he come and disappear for 45 years, right? What meaning is that? Okay, so now let's do a math, right? So let's the most recent person that and now this is an interpretation of those more with a more let's say loyalist perspective, trying to be generous here, who believe Lubavitcher Rabbi would rise from the grave to be Mashiach. It's possible, but it's highly improbable. So now let's say according to them, right? So he passed away in the early 1990s, right? And according to the Medrash, as we understand the calendar, right, etc., Seder Olam, etc. So the end of days would be 2030, right, or sooner. And so 1994 was it, and until 2030 is less than 40 years. So there's not enough time for example, the Lubavitcher Rebbe to be Mashiach according to that schedule.
There's other problems too.
Yeah, but
There's other problems too, right? Again, I was I'm the rabbi who coined the phrase "Kol Goalei Yisrael Min HaChaim V'lo Min HaMesim." Yesh chazaka b'mikra Kol Goalei Yisrael Min HaChaim V'lo Min HaMesim. There's a chazaka, a assumption in Tanakh that all redeemers of Israel from the living, not from the dead. God did not bring Joshua back in the days of the less spiritual kings or judges, and God did not bring in King David from the future in the days of the judges either. God took whatever leader Israel had available in that generation and made him. And there's a Talmudic principle based on this: Yiftach b'daro kishmol b'daro. Jephthah, the prophet Jephthah, the judge Jephthah, who was from questionable birth status, is treated with honor as if he was the prophet Samuel. So if Israel has to honor him, and God doesn't bring Joshua back from the past, resurrect him, or hurl in King David from the future to save Israel in the days of Jephthah, right? So why do we assume that Mashiach would come from the those who have passed away? The discussion in the Gemara Sanhedrin, therefore, is basically a theoretical construction in all likelihood. It's only a theoretical possibility, but the Chazaka in Tanakh, there's never a redeemer of Israel from the dead.
Well, my reference to what you had made to 1,335 years was up until October the 7th of last year. Okay.
Right.
Well, here there's a reference that says, "Happy is he who waits and abstains 1,345 years." So, question could be, does that mean in 9 more years? Because 1 year has passed.
No, it's praiseworthy. Verse 12 reaches 1,335 years.
No, the very last paragraph, last sentence.
Verse 12.
Mm-hmm.
But look in verse 12.
Yes.
Could you translate it, please?
Read it again.
Starting at the very top?
No.
Just verse 12 in the actual text.
Oh, the verse. Praiseworthy is he who awaits and reaches 1,335 years.
Right. So Peshuta Shel Mikra, the basic interpretation of a verse, we always have to keep that in mind. There's at least a 50% chance, even an allegorical verse, it's literal in some sense. So here it says the word 35, not 45. So that's an interpretation.
The commentary says 45. So
it could be a misprinting.
The commentary, I mean, that's an interpretation.
Yeah.
But except 1290 to 1335 is 45 years. That's where they get the 45 from. It's just math. But so who says 1290 is when Mashiach is revealed? According to that interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
But what does the actual verse say? 1290. Let's look on the verse that says 1290, which is verse 11, right? From the time the daily offering was removed, the mutable abomination put in place, 1,290 years. No description if this is a good or evil thing that occurs.
Ah,
in the actual verse, right? So again, when you the problem trying to take a medrash and then changing your faith based on one medrash, uh, just you have to compare it to another medrash, and that's hard to do unless you at least look at a commentary on that medrash. Thanks for joining us, Owen. And yeah, so we're near the end of the class, but just open the floor again. Any final questions
Well,
before we call it a close?
I've got one, Rabbi, here
Okay.
on the end of days here at the very end. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the spelling of the plural days is not the typical masculine spelling. And I don't know if you know anything or any elaboration on that or not. There's some in the commentary,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really elaborate on why it's done. It's just
Right.
that,
Rashi says it should be with a nun, not a mem. What? Yeah. Yeah.
but he doesn't say why.
Mhm. So the Medrash interprets, though, in the next paragraph, if you look
Okay.
in the commentary of the Article Blue Edition, the last commentary on this,
Okay.
the Medrash interprets homiletically as the reason why you need a nun is because it's referring to the word right, a reference to God's right arm. His power works miracles. To work miracles is called his right arm from the Medrash Shochetov. Also, his attribute of kindness is also called his right arm. See Rashi to Exodus 15:6.
Okay.
So from the time the second temple was destroyed, God withdrew his right hand in the presence of the enemy. God has not revealed the full measure of his miracles and kindness to his people. When time for redemption comes, he will return his right hand to its place. This too is the intent of the verse, save with your right hand and answer me. So in other words, according to this interpretation, the reason why it's called end days of evil may reign is because even without logic, there's going to be so many open miracles that people are just not going to bother to second guess it. So, in other words, we're about to enter a new epoch of open miracles.
Gotcha.
oh my goodness, how
Referred to
wonderful.
Hesed too. The right hand a lot of times is referred to Hesed. Is
Right.
letting
And
God
in merit of unswerving
know
faith
that.
during the I'm sorry, what were we saying?
She was explaining that to me. That's okay,
Sorry.
Rabbi.
Okay. In the merit of Israel, unswerving faith along the long, dark night of exile, and may the prophecies of the end be realized speedily in our time. Amen. Okay. So thank God, thank God, and uh, thank everyone involved in having this wonderful uh, completion of the book of Daniel. And we did it before Mashiach came, so it's really cool. We're excited about God's. We have extra faith in God's uh, love for us. And that's a beautiful thing. So now I just again wanted to reiterate one verse from the book of Zechariah about the redemption, because I think we've helped some people put aside some misconceptions about the end time and over the course of our study here. And so just the most important thing to understand about Mashiach ben David, because Mashiach ben Yosef could even be just a movement, uh, it's or era in history. It doesn't even have to be a physical being, but Mashiach ben David has to be a physical person, has to be a righteous person. So we have to understand what is the key factor, the difference between Mashiach, the son of David, to achieve the Elijah the prophet's medrash, Elio Zuta's Elio son of Elio says that Mashiach, the days of Mashiach is called the days of Ben David. So the whole thing is tied to this one person. But he's a linchpin. It's the days that God is saving Israel, as we say in our daily prayers. We have no king, redeemer, or savior, but you, God. And it doesn't mean that God is going to splinter off into a human. It means God is God, and there will be a human king who serves him just like in the days of Moses. Uh, so but remember the verse from Zechariah. So in the book of Zechariah, Okay, and we quoted this in the few weeks past, but this is Zechariah chapter 4, verse 6. Ve'yan ve'omer elai lemor zedvar Adonai el Zerubbabel lemor lo v'chayel lo v'chach kim beruchi amar Adonai tzvos. He spoke up and said to me, "This is the word of Hashem to Zerubbabel, who was the forefather of Mashiach, the Mashiach of his generation. If the people were righteous enough in the generation of Ezra, then he would have been actual Mashiach ben David." So the prophecy continues saying, "Not through army and not through strength, but through my spirit," said Hashem, Master of Legions. So not through army and not through strength, but through God's spirit, through the Torah, through the power of logic. That is the difference between Mashiach and somebody who says he comes with a sword or something. So Mashiach comes to give God's hope to the world and God's logic to the world. You put God's hope to the world and God's logic to the world, you already have a chance for people to understand, have an awakening, a miraculous awakening. And if that is not enough for them, so then there will be a further awakening. And that reminds me of the verse in Jeremiah. Yeah, God's Torah is so amazing. Okay. So
I don't think there's any coincidence because that verse you just quoted has a lot to do with the festival we have coming up of Hanukkah.
yeah, and so this is the most important thing about Mashiach ben David. He's not coming to fight wars on purpose, although he's prepared to fight if necessary. He is coming to have a spiritual awakening in the world. And the way he should fight is not by having the most nuclear bombs. He should fight by force of logic and holiness. Holiness founded in the correct moral and ethics of God's Torah. Jim. So beautiful. Ooh. Any other questions while I'm looking up this verse?
Rabbi, since everybody's quiet here and you're looking for that verse, I think it'd be a time to sneak in a question here. I put up on the I added a question there on the chat. What is when Daniel there and making reference to this abomination, that desolation? What is that referring to? Abomination, that desolation.
Right. This
That's
is
over already.
no. This is not yet. This is another. This is a phrase that's repeated previously in the book of Daniel. So in this case, it's written without a vav. That means an incomplete desolation, abomination, abomination that is desolation. So therefore, I said it makes sense to me that it's referring to something that is monotheistic but also wrong.
So, I mean, just to be a little bit more poignant, that would be something that would be referring to Christianity, even though it appears to be monotheistic, it's still not right.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
It could, if the dates match, it could refer to like Reform Judaism, but it doesn't. But again, it's the implication we're talking about a worldwide event, or something preventing the worldwide redemption. So not being able to build the temple that Ezekiel explicitly, clearly, literally is talking about has to be on the Temple Mount would be something that could fit in that category. Okay, so just thank God. I'm sorry, I'm getting tired, I guess. There's so many verses that could just be fulfilled when Mashiach comes, and it'll point to that, and we could refer to this again. This doesn't have to be the end of our discussion about this, but so when I remember that verse, then I could quote to you later on. But thank God I was concentrating this book. It's amazing. It's so deep, and you just if you only looked at King James Bible, you never really got into this. I guess like we were like but it's really beautiful, and try to get if you don't have it at home, try to get one of these good books, so the commentary. And you saw many verses that have really intricate commentary. We only covered half of the comments on that verse. So there's even more to learn than we covered here in class. So I urge you to continue with that. All right, so next two books on our menu chronologically is the Book of Esther and the Book of Ezra. So that's our plan. Next time we'll try to start the Book of Esther.
Esther are we reading from, Rabbi?
We could do again State of the Blue edition,
Okay.
but
Okay.
we'll have color commentary from other books.
Okay.
There's the Art Scroll Tanakh version.
Okay.
By the way, in the Art Scroll Tanakh version, it's called Megillah, and then up close you can see it's the Book of Esther.
All right, well, Rabbi, we appreciate you teaching us and taking the time to go over this book with us. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, and I mean, there's more I want to say. You saw some of the most interesting commentaries. I was cutting off halfway through the discussion, but that's just so we're only up to 2.5 hours of tonight's class instead of a 5-hour class.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if we finished verses 2, 3, and 4, we'd have been another 3 hours.
Yeah. So feel free to ask a Daniel question in a later class as well.
All
right.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.